For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. You're on our daily program, The Gist. On The Gist this evening, we have a guest who has watched terrorism, watched Pakistan, Afghanistan and the region as a whole from the prism of counter-terrorism for the Cabinet Secretariat or the Research and Analysis Wing as it is more popularly known. My guest is Ramanathan Kumar, who retired as Special Secretary in the R&AW and is now an occasional writer, broadcaster and someone who studies the region even today despite having retired from active service. Welcome to this program, Kumar.
Thank you very much, Nitin. It's a great pleasure to be with StratNews Global and The Gist.
Thank you. So today I wanted to speak about Pakistan's removal or coming out of the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force grey list. You wrote a piece in one of the newspapers I read, and that sort of created some curiosity amongst a lot of people because you have covered the ground, but again, at the risk of a repetition, FATF, how effective is that organization, and how does the organization look at countries which are financing terrorism or looking at proliferation, financing proliferation? What is the background of that organization? A bit if you can tell us.
So, as I wrote in the piece, the Financial Action Task Force was set up way back in 1989 by the G7 countries. And it was primarily a body to tackle money laundering, which was perceived to be undermining the very fundamentals of the global financial system. Then the FATF also evolved. It was meant to prescribe international standards. So it was a standard setting or a norm prescribing institution. Mm-hmm. And the idea was to set up a anti-money laundering global regime that was based on international best practices. The ambit of the FATF actually expanded after the September 11, 2001 attacks.
Right.
That is when the entire issue of financing of terrorism came to the fore. Correct. Because there was a realization that it was basically Saudi money, this was the American perception, which was underwriting a lot of radicalization and extremism worldwide. And so the financing of terrorism became an important objective of the FATF. Mm-hmm. And then later on, of course, countering the financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction Correct. Was also added.
Right.
Now, as you know, the FATF prescribes a set of recommendations, Correct. 40 in all, which yes. countries all over the world, they sort of follow them as a kind of a global benchmark. Mm-hmm. Now, you must also remember that money laundering and terrorism are really distinct phenomenon, although sure. they are sort of, in a sense, clubbed together under the umbrella of the FATF. Mm-hmm. Money laundering requires a predicate crime, sure. and the proceeds of the crime are used, are whitewashed or laundered. Right. Whereas in terrorism, funds may be raised entirely by legitimate purposes right. to commit the crime of terrorism.
Right. So even nation states can do that.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So over a period of time, FATF has become an effective mechanism to strike at the roots of the financing of, to strike at the roots of terrorism right. via the financing route. Now, Pakistan has been there before in the grey list.
Yes. Thrice at least. Oh, this is the third time.
This is the third time, and this is the longest period for which it has remained on the grey list.
Right.
Now, the grey list really entails increased monitoring of the anti-money laundering and anti-financing of terrorism regime of the countries concerned.
Right.
Now, increased monitoring per se doesn't really, have such grave consequences.
Sure.
But then this is the stepping stone for the other level, the higher level, which is the blacklisting.
And there are only 3 countries, if I'm
That's right.
mistaken.
While there are some 20 odd countries in the grey list, there are only about 3 countries in the blacklist.
But like you mentioned, when does the FATF action, the Financial Action Task Force, deem it fit for a country to come out of the grey list? So there are some actions that they have to take. So what did Pakistan do to come out of this?
That's right. So initially, of course, the country had to enact money laundering legislation.
Right.
Then you had to have an effective regulatory mechanism. Nodal agencies had to be designated for carrying out this purpose. This was what was broadly known as technical compliance.
Okay.
But then over a period of time, there was a realization that mere technical compliance is not enough, not good enough. I mean, Pakistan also enacted an anti-money laundering legislation when it was there on the grey list before.
Right.
But what really counts, as we all know, is concrete action against terrorists and terrorist organizations. So this time, I think Pakistan realized or felt that the FATF was serious about the matter, and if it did not sort of take concrete action against the organizations and individuals of concern to other members of the group, then there was a very real risk that eventually it might be put on the blacklist, and therefore it took action against organizations.
And demonstrable action.
Demonstrable action against the Lashkar-e-Taiba, Hafiz Saeed, Zakir Rahman Lakhvi, and at
Sajid
long last,
Mir.
Sajid Mir. They were tried, they were convicted and sentenced and fined as well.
Right.
And all of them are now in jail.
Right.
Now you could argue, the sentencing under terrorist financing laws is arguably of a slightly lesser magnitude than
the
murder
and crime itself.
That's right.
Yeah.
But still, it is something. It is a start at least.
Right.
It has a deterrent action. Even Masood Azhar, I understand, was of the Jaish-e-Mohammed, was tried in absentia and convicted, but apparently he has never been arrested. And sometime back when an FATF team went to Pakistan, the Pakistanis tried to create a smoke screen by saying that he had possibly escaped to Afghanistan, but nobody fell for it. And of all, the Taliban countered this pretty strongly, and they said that terrorist masterminds continued to operate with impunity inside Pakistan itself. And there was no point in looking for them in Afghanistan. So the fact of the matter is that 4 years on the FATF
grey list,
on the FATF grey list has led to some demonstrable action by Pakistan. Of course, they need to do much more, but here is an example of concrete and sustained pressure by the international community having a deterrent effect on Pakistan.
So just for our viewers' sake, just to refresh your memories, Sajid Mir was the main conspirator of the Mumbai attacks in 2008, popularly known as 26/11. And finally, after having denied his presence and saying that he is not traceable, then somebody had said some reports had said he had died. Finally, he has been convicted. So that was the context. But coming back to the entities or the countries which put pressure. So long as, I think you have alluded to this in your article also, so long as the US was interested in getting Afghanistan under control or staying in Afghanistan, it kept putting pressure on Pakistan. But Pakistan also has friends in FATF. And from an Indian point of view, what are the next steps that India or similar countries with similar thoughts must do to make sure that Pakistan remains accountable as far as terrorism is concerned?
So I think the action at the FATF will have to go hand in hand with a host of other actions. I mean, there's no single magic bullet to addressing all our concerns. So there will have to be simultaneous diplomatic pressure at the UN and other world bodies. Even on the FATF, I mean, this is not the end of the road. If Pakistan has been on the grey list on 3 occasions, it can well be there on a 4th occasion as well. So much depends on how, on the kind of action that Pakistan continues to take or not take. And from our perspective, I think we will have to keep monitoring the situation closely and applying as much pressure as we can on Pakistan through a variety of mechanisms
on multiple fronts,
till such time as there is convincing evidence of a change in the thought process among the powers that be in Pakistan. As I said, there has definitely been some action, but infiltration across the line of control has not ended. It is definitely lower than before, but it has not ended by any stretch of imagination. Similarly, all these drones, which are
sightings and
also droppings
of weapons
and recoveries. Now, all that certainly cannot take place without some kind of nod from the powers that be. And therefore, the evidence at this point of time is somewhat mixed. And we need to see clear evidence of a clean and permanent break with terrorism as far as Pakistan is concerned.
If we have to do any outreach to them or have a revival of any talks or any relations with them. But let me ask you about the United States attitude towards countries which have past records on terrorism, on giving shelter and also encouraging terrorism. Does it have a stomach to further, punish Pakistan or keep Pakistan under pressure? Because of late, the indications are that the Americans are now willing to forgive the recent past and give them, sustenance package for F-16. Also talking about reviving some kind of strategic ties with Pakistan, despite India's objections. So, where does US stand in all this?
So, as I said, you have to look at the history of this entire business, and if you recall, the United States had never declared Pakistan a state sponsor of terrorism, despite the evidence, at least from India's point of view, being overwhelming. I think even objectively speaking, the evidence was overwhelming, and still the US in its every year the US brings out its annual report on terrorism. They never designated Pakistan a state sponsor of terrorism. Finally, when it came to the 9/11 attacks, an enormous amount of pressure was mounted on Pakistan to cooperate with the US or else. So it is a hard fact of international relations that countries look at these things from a rather selfish point of view, and as long as no terrorist attack takes place on American soil, which emanates directly from Pakistan, the US will calibrate its approach. If such an attack takes place, then of course the gloves will come off completely.
Yeah.
So therefore, but I think it is a fact that terrorism emanating from the broader Af-Pak region remains an issue of concern to the US. And therefore, I think there is a lot of scope for us to work with the US, and I'm sure they are receptive to our concerns. They have to balance that with various other factors that are important to them as well.
Relations, yes.
But I think on the whole, on terrorism and counter-terrorism, there is much scope for working closely with the United States, as indeed with all other international partners.
Excellent. But I mean, since you spoke about Af-Pak region and you watched it all your career, and most of it spent in counter-terrorism, what is your sense, and this is my final question perhaps, what is your sense of that region now after Taliban has spent more than a year in power, if one has to say, and is it now on a kind of a lower trajectory, or is there a problem between Afghanistan and Pakistan more so rather than towards India, or there are enough signs that it hasn't really ended or got on a lower scale against India, terrorism wise, the threat to India from that region?
Well, I think there is definitely a real problem between Pakistan and Afghanistan. I think the rise of the TTP really is what makes the present situation very different from what it was, say, in the 1990s or between 1996 and 2001, when the Taliban was in power for the first time in Afghanistan. I think Pakistan's overriding calculation has been, to completely eliminate Indian influence from Afghanistan, and that is really a sign of paranoia, because India can do an enormous amount of good in Afghanistan for the people of Afghanistan, and that only I think creates a sense of mutual trust and security throughout the region.
Sure.
And in that, in the process of countering that overarching fear of theirs, Pakistan has tried to use Afghanistan as its own backyard, which of course is deeply resented by the rulers and the people alike of Afghanistan.
Sure.
And I think we are seeing that process in play now in the region. The Taliban also, have experienced, I dare say, the somewhat ruthless aspects of Pakistan and its intelligence agencies during this intervening period.
Right.
And so they are not exactly giving any comfort to Pakistan at this point of time. But of course, that should not, make us complacent in any manner. The fact of the matter is that in a place which is poorly governed, or a space that is poorly governed, there is every chance that terrorist groups will rush in to fill the vacuum. We all are aware of, the Khorasan branch of the so-called Islamic State or Daesh. It does have an established or known presence in Afghanistan. Our concern, of course, other than the ISKP, is the fact that as they did in the past, the Lashkar and the Jaish can also make use of lax governance or poor security in Afghanistan. So while Pakistan is busy sorting out its own problems with Afghanistan at this point of time, I think we also cannot afford to lower our guard in any manner.
So, just in conclusion, the Pakistani action against some of these terrorist leaders and entities is just a beginning perhaps, and also India cannot become complacent as you have mentioned. So maybe this is a good start, but there is a long way to go as far as fight against terrorism is concerned, as far as India is concerned.
I would entirely agree with that, Nitin.
Thank you, and thank you for such great insights on the region and terrorism and counter-terrorism. It's a pleasure having you on our program.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Pleasure. So, viewers, you know where to reach us. Our program is available every evening. You know our social media handles, and you know where to send your comments and feedback. This was Ramanathan Kumar, formerly of the R&AW, and now a commentator and analyst who has great insights about terrorism and counter-terrorism in the region as a whole. For the time being, it's goodbye.